Well, good morning, everyone. Um, I want to appreciate just tell you I appreciate having the opportunity to speak to you this morning. Uh, the work that you're looking to do in life is very important to individuals who typically just may understand their own rights, where they sit in life, or what they actually own. To own real estate, just in general around the world, can be very challenging and arduous at times when you're trying to figure things out. So, um, I know probably other presenters had slides and other information that they uh, present or and so forth. Not how I like to operate. I believe that, as people are learning, I think that talking about the key areas so that individuals can actually go and research the information, right? And begin to understand the entire components. Because sometimes when you see the redacted versions, because that's pretty much what presentations are, when you see the redacted versions, you kind of miss certain things that you can learn if you do the full research on it, right? So um, I'm going to start with one just covering who I am. My name is Willie Donwell. I'm the administrator for the City of Detroit Board of Review. I was also the chair for many years. I stepped down this year as chair only to take over the administrative role so that I could manage the Board of Review itself. The job had, and this is, believe me, a real job. It had became or has grown to the point where there need to be just a separation of the roles so that the process could be managed properly. So I'm going to start with the General Property Tax Act. And I'm just going to cover some things briefly, and we're going to kind of dig into the things specific to the Board of Review. But we have to start with the General Property Tax Act because that's where the Board of Review gets its life from, right? Act 206 of 1893. The very first segment of the General Property Tax Act generally says that all property, real and personal, in the jurisdiction of the state of Michigan, unless expressly exempt under the act, will be taxed. That's all property. So I know sometimes, people think that, well, I have a church, I'm supposed to be exempt, or I have this, I'm supposed to be exempt. Unless you follow the rules in the state of Michigan and apply for certain things, it is not automatically exempt. And so we're going to get into, again, areas that the Board of Review specifically covers, but I need to bring that point up specifically in terms of how and why sometimes in certain states or certain areas, things are not just automatic. You have to always go back to the beginning. So also in the General Property Tax Act of 1893, there is segments 211.28 through 211.30, which covers the Board of Review, how the Board of Review was created and why it's created, who can be appointed and the term of the board members, and their responsibilities. In general, the Board of Review is based upon individuals who live in the township or city. They have to live there. Next, 2/3. And I'll get specifically to Detroit in a second. 2/3 of the sitting board members have to own property. And the purpose of that is so that how can you make a decision on something and you don't own something yourself, right? So some common sense there that helps individuals understand that you're being taxed, so you should have at least some idea of what you're supposed to be doing. And I'm saying that in general because as we progress, you're going to see that not all board members are real estate professionals. Not all board members have a background in law or accounting. These are just individuals from the community that are appointed by the township board or council to hold a position make a determination on property value. Kind of interesting. So the and from there, then we have the Detroit City Charter, Section 9-401, and which simply says that the City Council can sit as the Board of Review or appoint members to the board. And the appointment to the board is just like City Council. It's one from each of the 7 council districts and 2 at large. So it's 9 members. And again, going back to the General Property Tax Act, 3, 6, or 9 is the way that the boards can be created, 3, 6, or 9. So in the city of Detroit is 9 council members, so we can have 9 Board of Review members. And from there, we have, you will probably find 2 different, for a little while, 2 different areas of information from the Detroit City Code, because it's been updated. The most recent starts with 44 in terms of areas of taxation, and not 128. So 44-4-5 is the Board of Review, and how the Board of Review is created, how they're compensated, preferably, not as a mandate, but preferably who can sit on the Board of Review, and the general rules as it relates to things that the Board of Review can and can't do, including creating its policies and procedures, which again has to also be approved by City Council. The great part about having some of those things in the ordinance, again, gives the Board of Review some guidance as it relates to what they can and can't do. Got to remember, these are citizens from the community who may not have any background whatsoever in government, accounting, law, real estate, anything. And so the composition currently of the current Board of Review is you have a retired nurse, you have a retired UAW worker, you have a retired veteran from the military. So again, different people with different backgrounds. But the idea is so that there can be individuals from the community that understand, right? Because you have to live in the city, that understand what the community is either going through or what challenges the community is facing. I'm sorry, have something else going on in the background. There's always work here. So and by the way, as we continue to talk about the Board of Review, the guidance for the Board of Review and direction first comes from the State Tax Commission. The State Tax Commission is who's responsible for the interpretation of the General Property Tax Act, and they will give that guidance in the form of either a bulletin, a statement, training, or some path, actually even sometimes through a local assessor to provide that information, or that in terms of direction that the Board of Review needs to understand or go. The Board of Review, while in a lot of cases has the ability to do a lot of great work, sometimes the board's hand gets tied when it comes to some direction that's given to it by the State Tax Commission. So the one thing that I always like to do is I always believe that there's an option. Just tell me what the rules are and I know how to play the game, right? And that's what I want you to always think about. And that's why, again, we're having this as a discussion versus having slides, so that you can understand what the game is, go and read the rules, and then you will know how to play. Because the most important part, again, as you do the work that you're going to be doing, is understanding how to work with, work around, or work through the challenges that you're going to be faced with, right? So the one thing that I've always been conscious of is understanding what everybody else wants and then trying to come up with the best way to achieve the common good or the common goal that's going to best serve the person that is most challenged. Yeah, there's going to be days where you're not going to satisfy everybody, but what you want to be able to do is to satisfy the person that is going to be harmed the most. And these are the things that you have to consider when you are working through process, right? And it will sound like I'm getting a little off track, but I'm going to circle back around and bring the discussion home as we continue to talk. So the concept of the board of review is to hear appeals. Our specific job is to hear appeals regarding real and personal property. Personal property is items that's owned by businesses, right? So the ovens that, Little Caesars has that makes the pizzas, that's personal property. And again, unless the value of it, example would be if the value of those, the complete, all the personal property that was in that pizza restaurant fell below $80,000, it may not be taxed because there's a specific exemption for small businesses, right? Little Caesars doesn't fit that category because they have stores all over the place, and typically the value of the personal property per each store is over $80,000, and but it does depreciate. So the state tax commission gives them a metric in which to follow to show the depreciation in terms of them applying how much they will be taxed or creating the taxable value for the personal property each year. And again, I'm just talking about some things generally that, again, Board of Review members should know when they are making determinations on appeals that's in front of them. But I just said a whole lot. And do we honestly believe that as we go across the country and look at boards of review or we get in front of folks that someone who was, in the nursing field and not taking away from, their level of education at all. But that's not an area that they are commonly that they commonly deal with, right? So they, may not fully understand all the workings that goes in front of, or the process that goes along with creating that personal property statement, along with understanding the process that goes along with, or the guidelines that's set by the State Tax Commission in valuing property. The State Tax Commission gives a manual to local assessors in terms of how they have to value property. And in some cases, like Detroit, it can be challenging because, the manual may not necessarily go along with the actual condition or the location or area of the property. So as we, again, look at the makeup of the Board of Review and where the individuals from the board comes from, and then what they're actually going to be reviewing and considering, there is, even like with myself, it took some time for me to really understand and grow and build and grab a hold of all the roles, the responsibilities, and what needs to be done. Actually, quick funny story, and I'm going to get back on track. How I got to the Board of Review. The Board of Review in 2007 was actually about to be under investigation for some things that probably should not have been doing. And so I was asked by then Councilmember Martha Reeves to come in and act as her appointee for the Board of Review. When I first went to the orientation, all I got was a trifold pamphlet, a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that was twice, and it just kind of talked about the border review and
This was
pretty much nothing.
2007?
2007.
Okay, thank you.
2007. Yep. And so the during that time, there was also all these news articles and a lot of things going on regarding the border review. And I told Councilman Reeves, fine, I'll stay through the end of your term, and I'll dig in and see how I can help out. So as I sat through the orientation, and then the very next day, I'm thrown into having a stack of poverty exemption applications in front of me, literally to the tune of a couple thousand. And I mean, literally. And so in reviewing the applications, I'm saying, why in the world am I reviewing something and I have not had any even reasonable training in terms of what I should or should not be doing? So then I went to Ellerine Smothers, who was the board review secretary, and I says, where are the rules, where are the guidelines, and so, yes, well, we went through it in orientation. I says, it's got to be something written. She says, well, Mr. Donwell, it's in it all falls under the General Property Tax Act. I say, okay, where can I find that? And in the assessor's office, there's a small library with manuals and information and so forth. So they had it there. And I says, okay, well, fine. Can I look at it? She says, yep, you just can't take it out of the office. Fine. So for the next 3 days, I sat and read the General Property Tax Act. And it gave me a full understanding of what the responsibility of the border review is, and even more, its limitations. From there, I began to dig in and read the bulletins. And then when I got back to work on the applications, so now I'm looking at things more from a, generally learned individual who has reviewed information, and I'm looking at things now more statistically than maybe compassionately at that time. So as I'm reviewing the information, I'm going through my first, we'll say 30, 40 applications, but one thing was consistent with all of them. Everybody was under the poverty level. Everybody had a struggle or something that was impacting their life, where it made it difficult for them to not just pay their taxes, but even to have a reasonably decent quality of life. You had individuals who, and again, I'm just talking about the first 30, 40 applications, individuals who could not afford to pay for their medication, individuals who could not just pay their taxes. They were getting shut off notices on their lights, gas, and water. They were having problems buying food. And these are the things that you see in these applications. So it began to give me a kind of a different perspective in how and what the real job is. And the real job is not just determining whether or not a person should be paying their property taxes. The real job is, how do you help an individual change their quality of life? But you have to stay within, in terms of the border review, they have to stay within, what my responsibility and roles and things that I have. But the city of Detroit and state of Michigan in the United States is a big place with a lot of money. And the biggest problem that I believe the government has is that we have individuals who are challenged, who are just trying to find their way, and there is not enough resources that's dedicated to support those who have a difficulty supporting themselves. It's a challenge, right? When a person retires and they're getting that, $762 or $768 a month in Social Security, and the light and gas bill is $300, the water bill is $100, that's over half of their check right there. Taxes are another $500. How are they going to live? Doesn't make sense. Medication, the co-pays that often change. Every time that there's a change in the law, the co-pay changes. That's just the reality of it, and that's the way business works, right? So we have to understand that the idea, while the idea of taxation itself is supposed to do some things that provide good to the citizens in terms of services, right? Our police, fire, emergency is supposed to provide for, trash pickup and all the other things that the operations of government at the local, state, and federal level. But at the same time, how much does government give back to making sure that our communities are better? And again, I'm going to kind of dig off a little bit and get us back on track. But I need us to understand that there are so many important things, again, as it relates to the work that you do or that you're planning to do, that it's all relative. And you will see so many things in the area of advocating for individuals regarding taxation that will tell you so many other things about the stories in their life. And that's really what you're looking to be able to do, is to create that one particular story that's going to benefit that person's lifestyle and quality of life. So the changes that I started working on involved not just looking at the board review itself and what the board review need to be doing, but constructing processes that created opportunity to get government engaged to help individuals. There's been, over the course of time, changes to ordinances that created education requirements as relates to taxation in the city of Detroit. There's been opportunities where information that I found with household members through people who have filed for tax exemptions, where I have helped individuals who are in toxic situations, help them get out of those situations with the use of the courts, the police department, and our school systems, right? Getting them into Wayne County Community College and other resources. None of this is within the realm or responsibility that I'm talking about now, is in the realm of responsibility of the Board of Review. Again, the Board of Review's responsibility is to make a determination of the value of property as it relates to real and personal property and classification changes. That's it, with a decision-making body. But as you get engaged and get involved, if you are an individual who are only looking at your job specific to one particular responsibility and you're not willing to go outside of that, look for something else to do. Because the path that you're seeking is the in terms of helping, is what is the right thing to do. And sometimes even doing the right thing gets me in trouble, but I don't care, because at the end of the day, what doing the right thing is what allows me to sleep at night. It is what allows me to, know that I was actually able to help someone. So the Board of Review's responsibility in terms of hearing appeals. There's probably a couple of other cities that have this process, but in the city of Detroit, you have to go through what's called an assessor's review. And again, so in the city ordinance 44-4-3, it specifically talks about this, where through February the 1st through the 15th, a person who feels aggrieved of their property value has the ability to appeal their assessment. And this is a process prior to taxation. It allows for the property owner, and it doesn't matter the property class. Now, commercial and industrial property does not have to go to the Board of Review. They can go directly to the Michigan Tax Tribunal as long as they file by May 31st. But they must file by May 31st. And even if they go to the Board of Review, they still have to file by May 31st. Going to the Board of Review does not get them that extension to July 31st. And this is only for commercial and industrial. The assessor review gives the Office of the Assessor opportunity to look at the property and make a determination to see whether or not something is wrong they can fix prior to the March Board of Review hearing period. The interesting thing in all of it is that the assessor review gives, while it gives an opportunity to for the local assessor to make a determination, I believe that every property owner should go through the entire process at least once. Go through the assessor review, then go through the March border review. And the reason for that is I believe that people should never be taxed without understanding how they are taxed. Taxation can be ugly, can be at times disingenuous if you do not pay attention to what is going on. And again, I'm just speaking honestly. And if you do not pay attention, you will wind up being in a place where the opportunity that you had to fix it has gone away. And the state can be very unforgiving. The way the General Property Tax Act is written, it gives very limited processes in terms of the ability to help, no processes in how a person can be hurt. And an example of that would be, let's say a person would be, let's say they had a principal residence exemption on their property, right? And let's say they've lived in the property for 10 years and it's been their primary residence. Well, the way the law is written, and this is under 2117CC and DD, the principal residence exemption, it only gives the ability for the local jurisdiction to take care of the current plus up to 3 previous years. That's it. That is all the help a person can get, even though they've lived in the home as their primary residence for 10 years. Now, I'm not saying the local assessor would do this, but let's say the person had a PRE for 10 years and they weren't supposed to have it. They can go and take that PRE off for those 10 years.
Can you let the students know what a PRE is?
Yes, a principal residence exemption is the reduction in the state of Michigan of the school operating millage. The local jurisdictions, the school operating millage can be at a maximum of 18 millage points. And the city of Detroit is right at the maximum, is 18 millage points. And so that 18 millage points under a principal residence exemption, a person who lives in their home as their primary residence, is where you lay your head at every night, or under the law, your place of that you intend to return to. You have the opportunity through an affidavit that's filed with the local assessor to have that 18 millage points removed, and you don't have to pay. So it's a great tool to reduce your property tax obligation for a homeowner. In the state of Michigan, you can only have one, and that's one anywhere in the world. So you cannot have a principal residence in Michigan and in Florida. You cannot have a principal residence exemption in Michigan and South Carolina or California, only in the state of Michigan. In the state of Michigan also, if you're found to have a PRE in another state, you can be penalized for up to $500. And so, again, there's no limit in terms of how far back the local assessor can go to hurt. And again, this is where it's very important to read and understand all the components of the General Property Tax Act, or any state in which you'll be dealing with advocating for a homeowner, because again, the local assessor has some very interesting tools in their toolbox, and some of them are not very nice. There are also things that they have the ability to do in terms of corrections and so forth that they don't need the border review for, because it's just a correction that needed to be done. Let's say something was not on the assessment roll. Normally, those situations are brought in front of the border review. But if it's a time period where the border review is closed, or the border review is not available, the local assessor can make that correction as a assessor's correction. So it is important to just understand, again, all the dynamics of all the pieces as we move along. So the appeal process I believe, again, that everybody should go through the process at least once so they can understand exactly where they sit. A homeowner who, does not know what a PRE is, especially a senior. Let's say they're in that gap where they may not necessarily qualify for a poverty exemption. In Detroit, we call it the Homeowners Property Tax Assistance Program, but they qualify for a solid waste reduction. Again, this is an opportunity for them to find out about ways to reduce their property tax obligation that could benefit them. So as we progress through the appeal process, it also gives them an opportunity through the assessor's review to understand how their property was assessed, because how it was assessed is going to determine how it's going to be taxed. And with the assessment process, at the beginning of the year, if there's a change in the assessment, they should receive an assessment notice. On that assessment notice is going to talk about the previous year and then the current year's tentative assessed and taxable value, and then any possible change, an estimate in terms of how much an increase or decrease in their property tax obligation, what it will be. As you were looking at that document, again, and it should clearly say that you have the right to appeal it. I always, again, recommend that people should never wait on government to send anything. File the appeal. You don't have to wait on an assessment notice. And again, this is anywhere in the state of Michigan. You don't have to wait on an assessment notice. The law is very clear on your right to appeal. So just simply file the appeal. And again, we're any jurisdiction that has the assessor review process, just check with that local jurisdiction to determine what their process is and just file it timely. The things that you want to make sure that you understand about the property itself is, again, how the property was valued. What sales study did they use? What comparisons were used in terms of the creating the property value? And then for the property itself, getting a real analysis of the property in terms of your own comparison of sales and what is actually going on with the property itself. Sometimes, and I know we're living in an unusual time right now, but sometimes it's good to actually physically go to the property and do an assessment of the property inside and out. And the reason why I say inside and out is because one of the faults of the assessing process in general is that local assessors may not either have the time or the ability to do an internal inspection of a property. And there could be things that's going on inside the property that the local assessor may not be aware of. And so you want to be able to document and record that information and make sure that you have all of that information and even use, if you want third, and which is always sometimes good, third-party verification. Get estimates, right? Get 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 estimates in terms of cost to cure. Now, there's this thing called Mathew Gast, and I laugh at the last name sometimes because I don't know who is gassing who, right? So the idea is that Mathew Gast is supposed to give a objective determination of what's considered maintenance on a property and what's the responsibility of the homeowner and what the assessor should really be looking at. But I want you to yourself to read why Mathew Gast was initiated and why that determination was made. The specific purpose of why it was initiated or why that action was brought forward was because local assessors may have been utilizing things like painting and decorating and other things that will be considered normal maintenance as reasons to consider them as additions to the property and adjusting the taxable value upward, creating a higher tax bill. So the idea was that these are things to say, okay, local assessor, you can't charge a person for painting. You can't add that to because that's just normal maintenance. You can't, we expect for a person to have a roof. But now if they upgrade the roof to having diamond shingles, well, that's a different story. But if it's just a roof, then, why are you charging them extra for a roof? So that was really the specific purpose of Mathew Gast. Sometimes, but you also have to consider that sometimes, though, local assessors and just in general may take it and say that, hey, this is, well, it's normal maintenance and, it should just be taken care of. Well, again, remember we were talking about people who were only getting $768 a month in Social Security, and they need to be able to pay a contractor to be able to come out and paint their house. And today the cost of contractors to do any kind of work generally starts in the several thousands of dollars. I don't care what it is. And do we honestly believe that a person that is on a fixed or limited income has the ability to maintain a property to the standards that may be under some rule or guideline? Now, yes, we know that people will always try to do the best that they can with what they have. This is their house. They don't want to see their house falling apart around them. But at the same time, if the property is degraded to the point of where the value has made the value of the property decrease, then is Mathew Gast a fair way to look at it? And again, going back to the board of review, that's another reason why there is a board of review. While the local assessor may have to, again, follow the rules that's given to it by the State Tax Commission, the board of review, which comes from the community, has the ability to, I won't necessarily say look past or, not consider those things, but what is actually the right thing to do? That's what the board should really be considering. What is just the right thing to do? And if a property has a value on it, and we're talking about the value of the property as of tax day, which is December 31st, the previous year, and what is the value of that property as it sits on that particular day, using a tool like Mathew Gast may not necessarily be the right thing to do if all you're talking about, hey, it's not just maintenance, it was maintenance that was deferred. So now this has caused an issue that is affecting the property. Well, guess what? The law also says, what is the usual selling price? So, excuse my language, but Mathew Gast be damned. The I can't get, the $10 I was looking for because of the condition of the property, right? So if I have this property that has a structural issue in the basement, and I have a buyer for the property, and again, they're not going to give me the full $10. They're going to say, well, hey, listen, it's going to cost me $350 to get this fixed, so I'm going to offer you $5, right? So, and again, that's why there is a board of review, to be able to look at and just sometimes use some common sense in terms of evaluating situations and making sure that the person that is most challenged in this process is not harmed, and that is the property owner. Again, earlier I talked about, certain things and processes and how things work and who we're dealing with and why you're doing what you're doing. And the point of all of it is that in order for the person that is seeking some justice, typically they are not going to know. They are not going to understand. You'd be surprised. And well, you're probably not, because this is why you're going down this path, right? But the number of people that come in front of the board of review and just say, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just here and I'm trying to figure out, because I think things are just not in order, and I don't know why my property is valued like this, but I don't think it's fair. So you have to take the time to go through the process with them and take the time to get them to understand, which is where this information that they're coming in front of the Board of Review, discussing and talking about, should have probably been dealt with at the assessor's review, where they should have been given all the information in terms of the sales study and how the property was assessed, and a better education as relates to what their questions were and answers to their questions. But at the end of the day, they didn't get it, and they're in front of the Board of Review. And oftentimes, and again, this is something I would always get beat up on too, because we would always run over time, but you cannot resolve some issues in 2 to 5 minutes. It's just wrong. If you think that, and I'm just speaking from, again, sitting on the Board of Review as the chair for many years, if you think that every person that comes in has the same issue or the same concern, or you think that every situation is exactly the same, it is not. And every single person is different. And if you're not going to be considerate enough to look at each situation and take the time to consider each situation on a case-by-case basis, need to be doing something else. Because at the end of the day, that person that comes in front of you is just trying to find their way. And I don't care what your background is. We have homeowners that come in with, again, doctors, lawyers, engineering degrees, and we have homeowners that come in that, no education whatsoever and can't even read or write. But take the time to go through and help a person understand where they're at, so that they don't fall down that rabbit hole. Because once we get done with confirming the assessment roll, that assessment roll, as of the first Monday in April, will be signed by the Board of Review. By that first Wednesday, goes to the equalization director of the county. The county equalization director will then make sure that everything, again, goes through its equalization process with all of the cities. And then all of the counties then forward that information to the state of Michigan. And once the State Tax Commission confirms that all of the data, that information now was created as state equalized value. Local municipalities will, during that same time, confirm their millage rates and their debt as relates to their responsibility, and then confirm all that information and begin to issue tax bills. And that's why it has to happen before the appeal process has to happen before all these other things happen. Because once the process of equalization and balancing and costs and the millage rates being created, once all that process begins to start, there is no other opportunity to appeal the assessment unless it's what's called an error correction of mutual mistake of fact. And yep, we all know things happen, and that's why it's written into the law as that. But those are, I won't say rare, to a degree where they, just so rare they don't happen, but, local assessors miss things. A error correction of mutual mistake of fact is, let's say a person had a garage and it was torn down, and that wasn't picked up on a record card, and it was found out later. Well, that can be done at a July or December Board of Review. But in addition, let's say they picked up, they went out and they found out the person that had an addition put on the property. That addition can be added to the taxable value, which can also be corrected at a July or December Board of Review. But once that tax bill is issued, the person becomes obligated and responsible for paying the tax bill. If they don't pay the tax bill that following year, as of March 1st, that tax bill is sent over to the county. And that's where the rabbit hole becomes very steep and fast, because the interest rates and the process behind the foreclosure, the foreclosure process, while it sounds like 3 years is a long time, it is very quick, fast, and unforgiving. And the appeal process is where we try to get everything right in the beginning, so that the person has an opportunity to understand what they're dealing with. And again, this is why I believe every person should at least go through the process at least once, so they can understand how, why, and what they're dealing with, and then move forward from there. The foreclosure process, again, very fast, quick, and unforgiving. We have a couple of tools now, and I won't get much into that, which is the PAYS program, but it's not my optimal way of helping. The way I've been advocating for years, actually since about 2012, is for a retroactive, and Professor Antahini knows my passion behind this, because she's been, desperately advocating, a very similar process, and trying to work with Wayne County and different folks to, because again, yes, the PAYS program provides some relief, but it's $768 a month, and still getting the $300, $400 a month that you're paying utility bills, food, $10, $15, $5 a month towards anything else sometimes can be a little challenging. So, but again,
we're coming to the end of if you could wrap it up so we can open up for the larger discussion.
Okay, so I'm just going to bring up a couple of other things that the board review is responsible for, and then we can get into the discussion. Two important things is, one, the board review has the exclusive responsibility of veterans exemptions. A veteran who is either 100% service-connected disability, special adaptive housing, or considered individually unemployable can have their homestead exempt of property taxes. They filed Form 5107, and this is under Michigan Public Act 161. Michigan Public Act 161. And that will give you all of the information as relates to even the history behind it, because he actually used to be MCL2, and it still is MCL 2117B, which actually previously was just under a pecuniary process. There was lawsuits and all kinds of stuff that the person had to go through to get that exemption. Now it's just a whole lot easier. The one that's most important to me, though, is the Homeowners Property Tax Assistance Program, which falls under MCL 2117U. It is exemption by reason of poverty, and it allows for a homeowner that lives, that owns and occupies their property as their principal residence. It gives them the opportunity to not pay any property taxes at all. And this is throughout the state of Michigan. Each local jurisdiction has to offer this program. Now, they may not necessarily have, created individual guidelines, but they have to offer the process. And if they don't have individual guidelines, then it defers. It will always defer to the federal poverty guidelines issued by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Affairs. Health and Human Services. But within the city of Detroit, there is a significant number of individuals that qualify for this process. And we have been, I have been advocating for a number of years, and now the city is formally engaged a lot more in terms of getting the information out, getting applications available. We now have an online filing process, which is the first stage of having a more robust online filing that's going to take us away from paper altogether. Now, it's going to take the city away from paper, but maybe not necessarily the homeowner. I'm sorry, Public Act 161. It is the Disabled Veterans Exemption. Disabled Veterans Exemption, Public Act 161. but the poverty exemption provides opportunity for homeowners who occupy the property to get their property tax exempted. Now, in the city of Detroit, there are thousands of people who probably do not apply, that probably do qualify. And so I'm asking you that if you know someone, or if you see someone that, is challenged or dealing with their property, or should not be paying property taxes, or feel that they fall below the poverty guidelines, and even if they are above the guidelines, if they have a special circumstance, we know that we have individuals who are taking care of people with special needs in their homes, individuals who may have a decent retirement, but they have medical costs that they're paying that's not covered by insurance. There are just different situations. We have to look at each case on a case-by-case basis and not make broad-reaching determinations. The only way that we know for people to actually get applications to us is if we can convince people to file. And sometimes, we need help getting people to just get the application to us. And sometimes that comes from other people, talking to people and say, listen, should you really be paying taxes? Listen, just file and see what they say. So it's important that, you guys stay engaged. It's important that you understand that there are so many people out here that don't know, that's just looking for that little sliver of light, that little glimpse of hope. And Megan, that's you. Leah, that's you. Teddy, that's you. Audrey, that's you. Shelby, that's you. Shinny, that's you. Andrew, that's you. Joe, that's you. Olivia, that's you. That's all of you guys. Shana, that's you. Megan, McKay, Michelle, Natalie, that's all of you guys. So I'm going to close with that.